Hey, what is going on, people? This is
What's up? What's
boy.
up? What's up for me?
Yes, this is your boy Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, owner and founder by Identity Talk Consulting, LLC, and your host for Identity Talk for Educators Live. And we are here live in Addis Ababa, and I have a very special guest. And this is really special for me because this is the first Temple guest I have on the show.
Yes.
I gotta make sure I put the Temple out there. TU all day.
That's right, all day.
So I have here Miss Shauna Brown, who not only went to my alma mater, but also, like myself, is a Connecticut native.
Yes.
So we just have so much in common. But we want to spend today talking about her many movements, because she has many going on. She is the founder of Melanin and STEM, which is a STEM-focused blog that focuses on young people who are in STEM, all fields of STEM. And it's particularly people who are young women of color, anybody who's in marginalized communities, who are doing, who's doing phenomenal work at STEM, all that. So we're going to talk about that and her latest project, which is Teach for the Culture. So we're going to talk about Teach for the Culture, as well as Melanin and STEM, and all the other things she's doing in the community. So let's welcome Shauna Brown to the show. What's going on, Shauna?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, Kwame. As Kwame said, it's also an honor for me to be here, to be on a guest on your show. We are both Temple alum, both from the same area in Connecticut, both teaching. I found out on your last interview, we actually worked at the same place in Philly at the YMCA. Well, I was I worked there as well. So
get out of here.
Wow. So our paths are always crossing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Thank you for having me.
A lot of great memories at the YMCA.
Yes.
So before we get into all the cool projects, tell us a little bit about yourself and, your upbringing and how you were brought into education.
All right, sure. Well, I think I was one of those people who, I think at a very young age, I wanted to go into education. So at the age of 3, I actually decided I wanted to be a teacher at that time. Between ages 3 and about 7, I used to, line up my dolls and pretend to play school. And I was always teaching. I was on the front porch teaching kids. That was just always in me. It was like rooted in me. By the time I was a teenager, I, volunteered at a lot of youth summer camps and summer programs, church school. And so my path was like, right into education. I've just always loved working with children. I've loved the field of education. I've been very passionate about it. I started doing a lot of research on it in high school. And so that's kind of how I got into the field.
All right. Awesome.
I went out to Temple University, TU. Here
you go.
Where I majored in education. There, again, I worked at the YMCA. I worked with a lot of the local schools in North Philly, did my student teaching in North Philly. I moved on from there, went to New York City, where I taught in Brooklyn, New York. So my first teaching assignment, age 22, Brooklyn, New York, Wingate High School. Okay. I was looking like one of the kids. But it was fun. It was like a tremendous experience. And then I came back to Connecticut, where I started teaching in Hartford Public Schools, where I stayed for 10 years. And then I moved on from there into administrative positions.
All right. Well, awesome. So you've been all over, from Philly to New York, and now back to Connecticut. So currently, you're at the Academy of Aerospace Engineering School, which is a STEAM-focused school.
Absolutely.
And you serve as the assistant principal.
Yes. Yep.
So why don't you tell us about the school and what's that experience been like for you?
Okay, sure. So I've been at the Academy of Aerospace and Engineering for about 5 years. As you said, I'm the assistant principal there. It's a STEM magnet school. And so we pull students from 46 different towns and cities from around Connecticut. 50% of our students are from Hartford. the other 50% are from the suburbs. And so the magnet schools in Connecticut were developed as a result of legislation. So the Sheff versus O'Neill lawsuit, which said that students in Hartford were isolated and not receiving the same quality education as students from the suburbs. And so they created a host of magnet schools within the state to address that need. Most of them have a focus. So the focus of our school, Academy of Aerospace and Engineering, of course, is aerospace and engineering. We're about 80% boys, 20% girls, females. We have a range of students from ages 12 all the way up to 18 because we're a 6 through 12 school. Mm-hmm. When I first started there at the Academy of Aerospace and Engineering, my first year, we actually ranked #1 as the #1 high school in Connecticut. Nice. And the number 15 high school in the nation.
Wow.
This year, we ranked among the top 100 STEM schools in the nation. So really proud of that. We're doing like awesome things, really innovative things. And it's just been awesome. It's been excellent.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, I have to say this. So my brother actually majored in aerospace engineering. He went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York.
Very cool.
He also was considering going to Case Western University. Actually had a scholarship to go out there, but I guess New York was more intriguing. But it was actually my first time learning about aerospace engineering, from him.
Okay.
So to hear that there's a school that specializes in it, I just think that's amazing.
Yes. Yep. And so although our theme is aerospace and engineering, we're located right near the airport and where a lot of the aerospace manufacturing goes on. We're also like a comprehensive school as well. So we have that theme woven in throughout grades 6 through 12, but we have, courses in engineering. We have courses in, of course, the general sciences, biology, a lot of the MCB, so molecular biology and medical research. Computer science is also a huge focus of ours. So we start that in middle school, going all the way up. All of our freshmen right now take AP computer science. And so that's one of the things that's like really special about us. There's no other school right now in the state that does that. So all students have access to a lot of those high quality and really great STEM courses. So we're proud.
You all are not playing. You said freshmen taking, if I'm not mistaken, you said AP computer science. AP
freshmen, so ninth graders. Yep. And so they have the option at the end of the course to either they can sit for the AP exam or they do not have to, but many of them do, and they actually do pass. So that AP computer science principles course was designed to be more accessible for a broader range of students because, of course, that's another area where they're trying to really broaden participation and widen participation in. So that's where we're going. That's the future.
Oh, that's great.
Right now, like computer science is as fundamental as reading, writing, and arithmetic. So
I'm assuming there's some coding involved as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Programming.
Absolutely. Yep. It's based on programming and computer fundamentals. So.
All right. So just staying on this STEM wavelength. So you started a blog where you're just sharing stories of other individuals who are successful in their STEM fields and just doing transformative work in their communities. So tell us a little bit about Melanin and STEM and what inspired you to start that blog.
Absolutely. So I started Melanin STEM back in 2017 as both a blog and an organization. The goals were to, first of all, to show and celebrate that there are people of color and diverse people in STEM fields. A lot of time the narrative we hear is that, we're underrepresented, we're not there, but we are. So we are out here. There are so many individuals doing amazing things in the STEM field, and they are people of color. One of the main reasons I started was because I noticed that, so at my school, although we're very diverse, we're about 70% students of color. In terms of staff, not so diverse. So we're probably about 96% of our teaching staff are white.
Okay.
About 4% people of color. And so although we have all of these amazing STEM programs and courses and pathways and opportunities, a lot of times the students were not seeing themselves reflected in these fields. So to me, there was a little piece missing. So there are all these opportunities here in the STEM field, and it's growing and it's booming and it's awesome and it's dope, right? And then there's the education the students are receiving, where they're getting their content. But the thing that was missing for me was that connection between the being able to see themselves in these areas and in these fields, right? Because most of the people who are giving the content, some of them, they connected a little less with, or they may not have seen themselves as able to go into those areas. And so Melanin STEM was showing that. So number one, it was showing how many different pathways exist, and they're endless, of course. But it was also showing that people who look like you, people who look like myself, people of color are in these fields and they are doing well. So it's showing both the ways you can get there, as well as the people who are within these fields. And so I thought that was really important to kind of bring that connection. Because to me, like, STEM is dope. Like, STEM is awesome, right? Like, science and all of it. And so I want students to feel that same energy, that same enthusiasm, and see themselves in it, and see themselves going into those paths. And so that's why I started the blog and the organization Melanin in STEM. I also wanted to connect classrooms and students within those classrooms to STEM professionals of color who they may not have in their schools. And so through this organization, I'm also able to connect classrooms with some of the volunteers that have volunteered to share their story through my blog. And so they're able to connect with students in classrooms, and students can see them and hear from them and hear their story. And so I thought that was very important as well. It's been going. I started about in 2017. Since then, I've featured over 150 STEM professionals of color. They've shared their stories. I've interviewed them. And so it's been amazing to me. And it's been also like, it's building community within the STEM community as well. So STEM professionals are not only able to connect with the future, but they're able to connect with each other as well. And so that's been powerful as it's built community. Have about 4,000 people within the community right now.
Oh my goodness, 4,000. But what's great is that the students are able to get the exposure. So not only they're getting it virtually, but I'm pretty sure that you're able to bring in individuals from the STEM fields into the school to share their stories with the students in person, and really get the students to see themselves in those roles.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome.
Exactly. And that's been powerful. And these people are coming from like all over the country and all over the world. So there have been people from the UK, from South Africa, from Kansas, Florida, California, Brazil, Colombia, I mean, everywhere around the world. And so it's been very, very powerful and very impactful. So I'm proud of that.
That's great. Now, I've been reading a lot of studies about college students of color, like us at one time, who are dropping out of programs or even classes where they're majoring in a STEM field. So my question is, what do you think is causing this trend? And I think you shared a little bit about that with the previous question. And also, how can we turn this around? How can we get more students of color to engage in STEM fields? Because if you look at the numbers and all the data, it's saying that you have a lot more students of color dropping out of these programs compared to the white counterparts. And it's a very huge disparity, even as we speak. So what do you think we can do?
So I think it definitely has to be a multifaceted approach. I think one thing is both institutions of education as well as programs within the institution have to be intentional about making sure that they're not just recruiting, but supporting students in these programs, right? So whether that mean building support networks within the programs, because a lot of times it can be very isolating for a student going through the program. They're very rigorous. Again, you know, there are not many, in some places, there are not many students of color within these programs, and so it can be isolating, right? So students can feel that imposter syndrome seeking or something else. So making sure that they're intentionally building community and supports for students within these programs is one approach. Another thing is making sure that we're starting the education and the exposure to these fields early so that students are comfortable, they believe they belong, they know they belong, and they know they can do it. So we have to start that early on. I did a presentation at UConn a couple of years ago about girls of color in STEM. And during my research, I found that there were, I think, about 70% of the schools who served like 90% minority and free and reduced lunch students did not have advanced math classes. Like, that just can't happen.
No.
Like, we have to make sure that the courses are also available in all of our schools and all of our programs. So not just the magnet schools or the schools with additional resources or in, you know, private schools, but all of our schools. And so that's another thing I would say that we make sure that has to happen in order for students to have more success in these programs.
Right.
So making sure we build that support network, making sure that we're starting early and that we're intentional about having those supports in place.
Absolutely. And just to add on what you're saying, a lot of these STEM programs are not found in urban communities. You have to go to the more rural communities in order to have access to these STEM programs. Like in Boston, for instance, a lot of our students have to go to Harvard or MIT in order to have access to STEM programs. Now, there are a few that are in the city, like in Northeastern and maybe Boston University, but more times than not, they're going across the Charles River to Cambridge in order to have access to those STEM programs that will allow them to, you know, have that exposure, but also to see what the potential can be for them to engage in those programs in college.
Right. Yep, you're absolutely right. And I think the same is true for Connecticut, with the exception of the magnet programs, as well as most of our states across the nation. So it's an access issue, as well as a, inclusion issue. And so making sure that we and, states and our boards of education are intentional about making sure that these opportunities do exist for students in our schools, in all communities. So it shouldn't be the luck of the draw, right? You shouldn't be able to have access to this great education just because you got in the lottery or just because you live in this zip code, right? It should be accessible for everyone. And so we have to make it happen, I think if we as a nation really want to see it happen, we just have to, just make it happen. Just do it, right? So.
I mean, it's all about equity at the end of the day.
Yes.
We gotta make the systems equitable for all,
That's right.
So they can all have the access. Now, we've talked about Melanin and STEM, but you have another brainchild that is really blowing up. Like,
Thank you.
For the culture. Teach for the
culture. Yes. So teach for the culture. Yeah. So, all right. So as enthusiastic and passionate as I am about STEM, I am equally as passionate, of course, about just teaching and education. And so I developed this brand called Teach for the Culture. Here's one of my bags right here, where I have T-shirts and
I got my shirt on as well.
Apparel. Yay!
Got my shirt on. I represent.
And so yes, I love it. Represent. And so it's really about so one, celebrating who we are, right? Because as you know, in education, people of color are also underrepresented. Yes. And so it's a piece about pride and celebrating who we are as teachers and educators. It's about building community with each other. It's about making sure that we're connecting content to culture and to students' lives.
Yes.
And so it's about all of that. So it's not just about the brand itself, but it's about celebration. It's about community. It's about access. It's about equity. And it's about celebration and just celebrating who we are while we continue to fight for equity. So
awesome.
So yeah.
So as people can see, I have, a Teach for the Culture shirt. Now, are there any other colors, not just for me personally, but for anybody else who wants a shirt or a tote bag or whatever product?
Yep. So for right now, we're just starting with the black and white. So we got the shirts, the totes, magnets, laptop stickers. But in 2020, we're definitely coming out with some additional styles and some additional colors. So the next one's coming out in January is going to be gray with the dark lettering. So.
Ooh.
So yeah, we coming.
I cannot wait to add to my wardrobe. Yep. Not wait at all.
Thank you. And again, it's a movement. It's a celebratory movement. I think a lot of times as educators, we get caught in kind of like the struggle of it and the, oh my gosh, we got to do this. We need this. It's not equitable. It's not X, Y, and Z. And while all those things are true, at the same time, I think it's also good to stop and like celebrate who we are and how we show up to this work. Because we are making a difference, right? We are making an impact.
Every day.
And we're doing it for the culture. So that's why I got Teach for the Culture.
Absolutely. And then, but then also, I don't think we celebrate ourselves enough for the work that we do.
Absolutely.
Because we're so, inundated, in the work itself and all of the issues that, we face personally as educators, but also, within the systems that, we work in.
Yes.
There's so much we have to think about that we tend to forget just how transformative our work is on a daily basis.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so part of the kind of the spirit behind the brand is also about positive affirmations. And so it's positive affirmations for students and for culture, but also for who we are as educators. And again, and how we show up. So like you said, a lot of times I think as teachers in general, educators in general, we put others first all the time. And so we're not quick to kind of stop for a minute, breathe, and be like, okay, I'm doing this. Like, this is who I am, and this is how I'm making a difference. And so I think that's important as well.
Awesome. So Teach for the Culture, Melanin and STEM. You have Academy of Aerospace Engineering.
Yes.
I mean, you're just doing it all.
Got a lot going on.
You're doing it all. So, as people know, I am here in Addis Ababa, and one of my hopes is that I'm able to, work in the different schools and try to help, transform the systems out here. But I understand that you've already done that as a Fulbright scholar during your time in Ghana, which is where my people are from. So shout out to Ghana.
Love it. Yes. So so I was a Fulbright scholar. And so with that, I had the opportunity to travel to Ghana, West Africa, with the U.S. government. There were 12 teachers selected from the country. I was one of them. It was one of the greatest and most impactful experiences of my life.
Nice.
We were able to study at the University of Ghana in Legon, and we're able to travel the country and go to different schools. We went to Mfantsipim, Kwame Nkrumah's, or Kofi Annan's old school. Yeah. We went to the Academy of Science and Technology, Holy Childhood, the girls' school. And so just working with those teachers and going to classrooms and building with educators there and learning from professors at the university was just a phenomenal experience. And also just on a spiritual and personal level, just being like back in Ghana, right? Many times. So my family's from Jamaica. And so a lot of Jamaicans were descendants from Ghana.
Yes.
And so going back to like the Cape Coast where the slave castles were, where people were taken to the Caribbean and to the Americas, and being in that spot and thinking to myself, wow, so I'm the first person in my family who has returned to this spot since, the 15 or 1600s. And it was just like a moment for me where I was just moved. It was emotional, right? So it was a really phenomenal experience. I encourage all educators to travel, to go to different countries, to work with educators in other places, to see different schools and just, broaden horizons and see what's out there. This trip with Ghana as a Fulbright scholar was fully paid for. So, for 2 months. So there are opportunities out there. It's just making sure you're, seeking them out, and, the world is your oyster, right? So
that's true.
Encourage everyone to just go and grow, because as you go, you grow.
And I think just as Black people, in general, we don't travel enough.
Right.
I mean, I have friends and even family members who are amazed by the fact that I live in Ethiopia now, but also that I've traveled to, at this point, about 20 different countries. And then if you ask my wife's traveled to twice as many. She's about almost 40 countries that she's traveled to. So, we're like world travelers.
That's right.
And, people are amazed by the fact that we've traveled to so many different countries. And it's just eye-opening to them. So it just makes me wonder, how many other people are fortunate enough to even have that experience to fly to another country or to leave their 5-mile radius in their neighborhood to just see what else is out there.
Yeah, gotta branch out.
Yeah, but then also at Ghana, and I don't know if I told you this, but I actually not taught in Ghana, but I lived there for 3 years when I was a kid.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Okay.
During my teenage years, I was there from ages 12 to 15. So this is mid to late 90s.
Oh, wow.
And I actually went to school out there.
Wonderful.
And I tell you, all the things you mentioned about the system in Ghana, I can attest that it's all true. It's very rigorous.
Yes.
They make you work hard.
That's right.
And mind you, I was in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade during those years, and it felt like college.
I believe it. Oh, yeah.
Studying for exams, and we were taking 12 different subjects at the time.
Right.
And you had to get an exam for each of those subjects.
That's phenomenal to me, though. That's awesome. But even being in those classrooms, like the respect and the, when you're in Ghana, as you know, you walk in the room, if you have to ask a question, it's please, I'd like to know. And then you ask the question, right? Or you stand up. There's just so many things that are embedded within the system there that help to create that atmosphere for like achievement and learning. It's just phenomenal. It also makes me think about how fortunate, the schools there are in some other places that didn't have the same history with, Plessy versus Ferguson, United States, and separate but equal, and all of those things, and the oppression that exists here.
Yeah.
And how students are able, with less resources, right, but able to achieve so much. Just the belief system and what's instilled in students from a very young age. It was phenomenal to me. So
the respect
I never knew you could do that. Yes.
Yeah, the respect factor was definitely real. Like I can remember my teachers entering the classroom, and all 50 of us are standing in unison, and we're greeting our teacher.
Right.
good
That's right.
morning, sir. Good morning, madam. And then they greet back,
Right.
and then they summon us to sit down, and then we all sit down and start the lesson.
Amazing.
It felt almost robotic, but it was genuine respect.
Right.
Even the worst kids in the classroom weren't even that bad, to be honest. They were actually really smart kids.
Yes.
And they would try to, cause a little mischief, but they knew better because I don't know how it is now, but, at the time when I was there, if you got in trouble, every teacher had a cane.
That's right.
And they beat you right there.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no such thing as corporal punishment. So now that I'm a teacher and I've taught in America and I've lived the Ghana school experience, I have so much appreciation for that experience.
Right.
But also I get upset sometimes at even my own students because they don't understand how good they have it. The fact that they live in a country where they have free K-12 public education.
Right.
It's paid off by taxpayers, all of us.
Right.
And then you go to a place like Ghana and other developing countries where you have to buy your own books.
That's
you
right.
have to pay for your school fees. And it doesn't matter how smart you are. If you don't pay for the school fees, they kick you out the school until you pay for them.
Right.
So some of the people who are, living in different homes and they might be serving as, houseboys or they serve different jobs, right? They're trying to raise money to get back into school.
Yes.
It's not always a situation where they don't have the education or they're not smart. They're in situations where they have to raise the money to get back into school.
That's right.
I could tell you many examples of that, but we don't have all that time to
do.
I
know. And that's like a different, so they have like a different access issue than we have in the United States, whereas
absolutely
school is free, but all the opportunities are not there. Whereas in Ghana and in some other developing countries, and most of my family's from Jamaica as well, and it's a similar system. The access is if you can't afford the school fees, then you're not going. Or if you're in a rural area, or if there's other obstacles. But people are hungry for that education. People are definitely hungry.
And keep in mind, this is like 95 through 98. So this is pre-year of the return era.
Right.
I was living it back then as a kid. I know how magical Ghana is. Ghana, I mean, this is where my people are from, my ancestors, my culture, everything. So I understand how special it is.
Yes.
So to see so many people coming now to Ghana, and they're partying and they're having a great time and they're seeing the magic that is Ghana. It just makes my heart melt, and it makes me a little bit jealous too because I want to be there right now. Like I want to be out there, but it's all good. It's all good.
You can make the trip. I would say I think every especially Black person in America needs to make that trip at least one time in their lifetime to the continent, at least once.
Absolutely.
And then every other person, right? Because and that was kind of part of the idea with the Fulbright fellowship, was to get people there to understand what it's like. A lot of times people think, when they think of Ghana or West Africa, they think of, not as developed as it is. And so it really is developed and very sophisticated, and it was wonderful. So.
And even if it's not Ghana, there's so many other countries you can go to. You can go to Nigeria. You can go to Kenya. You can even go down to South Africa. I mean, there's so many countries that are, very developed. And they have systems, particularly education systems, that are highly successful, particularly South Africa.
Yes.
I think if you look at the rankings for the top universities within the continent, half of the top 10 are South African universities and colleges.
Wow.
Half of them.
Didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it just comes to show you just how much value there is in education, you know, in Africa. And I'm just happy that people are now starting to open their eyes to the possibilities of
Yes.
development and just connecting, you know, with our diasporan brothers and sisters. So I'm just happy about that. So you've done a lot of phenomenal things. So I'm just wondering, who are some of your inspirations and role models as you were, you know, being brought up?
All right. So I would say, so definitely my parents. My mother is also, or was also a teacher. She retired about 4 years ago. So we actually taught 6th grade at the same time in the same system.
Wow.
So both of us were middle school teachers in Hartford, Connecticut at the same time. And that was just wonderful.
Oh,
and so, yeah, so she was a teacher for over 40 years because she taught in Jamaica before coming to the United States, and then started teaching here. Growing up though, I would always say, no, I want to be a teacher because I want to be a teacher, but no one has inspired me. I just want to be it because that's just in me. But when I got to college and, you know, after college, I was like, okay, I know that my mother was a person who really inspired me indirectly to become a teacher, because just her love of children, her love of teaching, her she makes every opportunity, she finds every opportunity to make it a teachable moment, and just shows endless love for children everywhere. And so she was my biggest inspiration in education. Even if we're going on like road trips as a child, it would be, okay, what river are we crossing? What direction are we going in? It's always teaching. And so that, you know, went into me. And so I find myself being the same way with my son, always teaching. And so she was one of my big inspirations. I think in the field right now, Chris Emden got his book right here, For White Folks to Teach in the Hood, and the rest of y'all too.
I actually have that too. I gotta read it. I'm still working on Bettina Love's book, which is
yes, I gotta read that one next. Gotta read that one next. Definitely inspiration, because he's a STEM person. He's a Columbia professor. I went to Columbia for grad school. And
he's at Columbia, so he's also, that's where he is. So yeah.
Yes, he's at Columbia. So yeah, that, you know, I love his work. Very inspired by his work. Jamila Liscott, Monique Morris. I haven't read this yet, but I've been following her work a lot. Push Out, Dr. Monique Morris, my soror also. She is doing a lot of work and is behind a lot of the legislation that's being pushed right now to end school push out. So the school to confinement pipeline for Black girls and for all students. So she's another amazing person I've been following, and her work is really inspiring to me as well.
Awesome. Well, I mean, that's something that I need to do going to 2020. I have so many books that I've yet to read, and I keep telling myself I'm going to get to them, but, you know, work and everything just gets in the way. There's just so much
I hear you.
to do.
I hear you. And
So
your book also, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, with his Identity Talk for Educators, wonderful, Shaping the Teacher Identity. Awesome. So big congrats to you. You also inspire me every day. I know you're a humble person. You don't boast and brag, but you're doing like phenomenal things out here. I'm like, how does he do it? Like, where do you get the energy? You're just like, 1 minute you're presenting, then you're writing, then you're hosting a talk show, then you're like, you are doing some phenomenal things, and you're making impact. So I appreciate you too, Brother Kwame.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that our paths have overlapped in so many ways.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just trying to do my part to help with the culture. I'm just trying to teach for the culture, just like
That's
you.
Right.
You know what I mean? But there's so much work to be done. So much more work.
Yes, there is.
But man, it's been a pleasure just having you on here, Shauna.
Yes.
You know,
thank you so much.
And just so that our audience knows, how can people connect with you through social media?
Sure. So if you're interested in the work with Melanin in STEM, you can go onto Instagram. It's Melanin in STEM, one word. I'm also on Facebook at Melanin in STEM. For Teach for the Culture, it's also Teach for the Culture as one word, at Teach for the Culture. And I have a Facebook page with Teach for the Culture LLC as well. So either one of those, I'm looking forward to more projects for 2020.
Yes. And then, and of course, we got some stuff that's coming out later on 2020, but we're not going to get into that right now. But just know that 2020 is going to be big.
Yes, big things, as they say in Jamaica. Big things like one.
I'm not going to try my patois right now because I just jacked up everything. But yeah, thank you, Shauna, for being on the show. It's just been great.
Thank you.
Keep doing your thing. Keep repping for Temple, for North Philly.
Always.
Connecticut, 860, all that. Keep repping.
860, Brooklyn, everywhere.
All that, Brooklyn, everybody. Keep repping for the culture.
Yes, for the culture.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for having me. And I hope you have a wonderful new year and many more successes and blessings to come.
Yes. Thank you so much. And for those who want to tune in to this show and just get more videos, you can go to my YouTube page and channel, which is just my whole name, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. You could also follow me on Facebook at IDTALK Consulting LLC, Instagram at Kwam, KWAM _the_identity_shaper, and Twitter at Identity Shaper, and all other social media platforms. So this is Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. On behalf of Shauna Brown, we wish you a restful holiday break, and we're going to see you in 2020.
Yes.
So see everybody in 2020. God bless all y'all. See y'all later.